Under the gentle glow of a street lamp, Leo stood frozen. The night air in Barcelona carried the scent of salt from the sea, but he barely noticed. His eyes were hollow, his breath shallow, and his thoughts raging. Moments earlier, he had slammed the door of his apartment so hard the frame shook. Words had been exchanged, harsh and irreversible. But it wasn't just the argument that broke him. It was everything. All of it had been building, quietly and persistently. The long hours behind the screen, the unrealistic expectations at work, the casual cruelties in emails, the unspoken disappointments at home, the constant pretending. Leo had become an expert at hiding the storm inside him. But now, the dam had cracked, and the pressure didn't just leak, it erupted. It wasn't always this way. Leo was the calm one, the dependable one, the guy who never lost it. But the truth no one saw was this. Calm wasn't peace, it was suppression. And suppression is a ticking bomb. It's strange how everything can appear so normal on the surface. A beautiful life, a good partner, a decent salary, and yet a single question. Why are you always so tense? Can shatter the illusion. The words weren't meant to hurt, but they cut like a blade. Leo didn't know where the shouting came from, or the bitterness, or the resentment. He just knew he didn't recognize his own voice, and that terrified him. So there he was at 2:47 a.m., walking aimlessly through the Gothic quarter, with no destination but desperation. His feet moved while his mind spun wildly. He thought about disappearing, about starting over, about whether peace was even possible anymore. He sat down on a cold bench, staring into the darkness as waves gently lapped the shore nearby. The chaos inside him echoed louder than the city around him. He pulled out his phone, not to call anyone, not to scroll, just to do something. And that's when it happened. A video, a single sentence. No algorithm could have planned it. No search term had summoned it. You can't control what happens, but you can control how you respond. Something in those words cracked through the noise in Leo's mind. He pressed play. The video was simple, no fancy edits, just a quiet voice talking about an ancient philosophy called Stoicism, something Leo had never even heard of. But it felt like someone had opened a window in his head, letting out years of stale air. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. These weren't monks or saints. They were warriors of the mind, men who had faced betrayal, chaos, exile, and somehow found peace. For the next 2 hours, Leo fell into a vortex of ideas that felt more like rescue than education. These were not just motivational quotes, they were instructions for survival, truths no one had ever taught him. He realized something staggering. Maybe peace wasn't for the lucky, maybe calm wasn't for the privileged, maybe it was a skill, one that could be practiced, one that could be built. And suddenly his entire life flashed before him, not as a story of failure, but as a training ground. Every setback, every rejection, every fight, they weren't signs that he was broken. They were invitations, opportunities to reclaim control. He hadn't needed a better job, or a more understanding partner, or a week-long retreat. He had needed this, a new way of thinking. From that night forward, Leo made a choice, not to be perfect, not to be emotionless, but to train his mind, to stop being at the mercy of every wave that came crashing in. He didn't want calm to be a mask anymore. He wanted it to be a foundation, and maybe you felt that too. Maybe you're watching this now because something inside you knows that chaos isn't just around you, it's within you. But if Leo found a way out, so can you. This story is just beginning, and where it ends might just be where your journey begins. If this speaks to something inside you, if you feel that this message could shift something in your life, do me a small favor. Subscribe to this channel. It helps us bring more stories like Leo's to life. And trust me, what's coming next will change the way you see yourself forever. Now, before we move on, I have a quick question for you. Drop your answer in the comments. When life gets overwhelming, what's your usual reaction? A. I keep it all inside and pretend I'm fine. B. I lash out and regret it later. Comment your answer below, A or B, and let's see how many of us are on the same page. Have you ever caught yourself thinking something so intensely, so repeatedly, that it begins to feel like truth, only to realize later it was never real to begin with? That's what Leo began to notice, weeks after that sleepless night on the bench. He had started reading more about Stoicism, applying what he could. But there was one lesson that didn't come in a quote or a video. It came during an argument. He was in line at a cafe. A woman behind him complained about how slowly the line was moving. Then she muttered something just loud enough to hear. Some people just take forever. Leo instantly assumed it was directed at him. His heart pounded, his face flushed. He turned, ready to say something sharp, but right before the words left his mouth, something stopped him. A thought. What if she wasn't even talking about you? That pause, just a second long, saved him. He stepped back, took a breath, and said nothing. Later, as he walked through the streets with his coffee, he realized something powerful. His mind had nearly hijacked him. The Stoics were right. The real problem wasn't the woman's comment. It was his interpretation. His thoughts, unchecked, nearly became his truth. That was the day Leo understood what Epictetus meant when he said, "It's not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." It was the beginning of a new practice for him. Not meditation, not journaling. Something simpler, but far more difficult. Observation. He started treating his thoughts like strangers on a train. Some were helpful, others confusing, and a few were flat-out liars. Instead of jumping up and following the loudest one, he just watched them pass. He noticed how often his mind told him stories. Your boss thinks you're lazy. That friend hasn't texted back because they're mad at you. You're falling behind. Everyone else is doing better. None of it was confirmed, but it all felt urgent. That's the danger. The mind, when left untrained, will convince you that your worst thoughts are facts. And unless you question them, you'll live a life reacting to illusions. Leo began to see his mind as a vehicle, a fast one with incredible horsepower, endless potential, but no GPS unless he installed it. Most people, he realized, are passengers in their own vehicle. Their thoughts hit the gas, their emotions jerk the wheel, and before they know it, they've crashed into regret, guilt, or self-doubt. So he asked himself daily, am I the driver right now? The answer wasn't always yes. Sometimes the wheel spun out of his hands. But even that awareness was progress. He developed a trick he called the brake test. Anytime he felt emotionally hijacked, whether it was frustration, jealousy, or insecurity, he would mentally slam on the brakes. He'd stop whatever he was doing and ask 3 questions. Is this thought true? Is this reaction useful? Is this feeling coming from the present or from a story I've carried for years? This gave him space, just enough to choose a better response. He also stopped labeling emotions as good or bad. Anger wasn't evil. Anxiety wasn't weakness. They were signals, indicators that his mind was sending him alerts. But like any alert, not all needed immediate action. Some just needed acknowledgement. And here's what surprised him most. The more he questioned his mind, the more freedom he felt. Not because life got easier, but because he stopped letting his thoughts dictate who he was. He started creating distance between stimulus and response. That distance? That's where power lives. It was never about being perfect. Leo still had off days, still got triggered, still caught himself spiraling from time to time, but he was no longer sleepwalking through those moments. He was awake. He understood now that his mind wasn't his enemy. It was a powerful tool, but tools don't lead. You do. You're not meant to be dragged behind your thoughts like a kite in the wind. You're meant to hold the string, and if you start doing that, even just once a day, you'll begin to notice something remarkable. You can feel the chaos, but not become it. You can hear the thoughts, but not obey them. You can be in the storm, but not of it. So the next time your mind takes off, before you react, before you respond, Ask yourself quietly, am I driving this thing or just holding on for dear life? There's a moment, always, right before things spiral out of control. The air thickens, time slows, every part of your body tenses. You feel it rise in your chest, the heat, the urge, the instinct to strike back, to defend, to be heard. That's the moment most people unleash. They raise their voice, they slam the table, they interrupt. Because somewhere along the way, we were taught that loudness equals strength, that calm is the territory of the weak. But Leo was beginning to see the truth, and it turned everything he believed on its head. It happened in a team meeting at work. His department had been struggling to meet deadlines. Tensions were high. Someone from a different team, a man who rarely contributed but loved the sound of his own voice, decided to throw Leo under the bus. Maybe if we had actual leadership in this role, the project would be done by now. The comment wasn't just disrespectful. It was a public insult. Everyone turned to see what Leo would do. His heart pounded. He wanted to fire back. He could have embarrassed the guy. He had the facts. He had every right, but instead, he sat still. He looked up, met the man's eyes, and simply said, "I'll let the results speak for themselves. If anyone wants to see the data, I'm happy to share it." That was it. No show, no power move, no emotional explosion, and yet the room went silent. Because Leo had done something most people don't know how to do. He held his ground without losing his balance. He showed calm not as avoidance, but as dominance over himself, and it stunned everyone. Later, one of his colleagues pulled him aside and said, "I don't know how you stayed so composed." That was powerful. That word stuck with Leo. Powerful. Not weak, not passive. Powerful. That's when it clicked. We live in a culture that mistakes volume for value. We reward outrage and mistake it for passion. But the people who truly lead, who truly influence, are rarely the loudest in the room. They're the ones who speak with intention, who don't flinch when provoked, who know when to act and when to wait. Calm, Leo realized, is not the absence of emotion. It's the ability to choose which emotion leads. He started watching the people around him more closely. At work, at home, in public. He noticed that the ones who yelled often lost control of the conversation. The ones who overreacted lost credibility. But the ones who stayed calm, they changed the entire energy of the room. They made others feel secure, respected, grounded. Calm doesn't shrink you. It expands your presence, but it takes discipline. Leo started practicing what he called the quiet stance. When challenged, instead of tightening up or getting defensive, he would breathe deeper. He'd uncross his arms, lower his shoulders, soften his jaw. He trained his body to be calm, so his words would follow. He also learned the power of what wasn't said. There were moments when silence spoke louder than any argument, when his refusal to engage in petty drama communicated more strength than winning ever could. He began to see calm not just as a personal asset, but as a strategy, a tool, a secret weapon. And yet, it wasn't about suppression. Leo still felt everything: anger, frustration, anxiety. He just didn't hand the microphone to those emotions anymore. He listened, but didn't obey. He chose his timing, his tone, his target. That kind of calm isn't given, it's built. And it's not just useful at work or in conflict. It transforms relationships. People began opening up to him more, trusting him more, asking for his advice. Not because he was always right, but because he was steady, dependable, safe. That's what real calm creates. Not fear, but respect. Not dominance, but influence. So if anyone ever tells you that staying calm means being weak, understand that they've mistaken chaos for courage. Anyone can scream, anyone can rage, but to remain grounded when the ground is shaking, that's mastery. Leo wasn't born with that ability. He trained it, he earned it, and you can too. Because true power isn't in how loud you are, it's in how little the chaos controls you. Melissa had seen it coming, but that didn't make it hurt any less. She had worked late nights, skipped weekends, covered for colleagues without ever asking for credit. She believed in showing up, staying humble, and letting her work speak for itself. So when the promotion she'd quietly hoped for went to someone who had barely been with the company 6 months, someone with a family name that carried more weight than performance, she didn't just feel overlooked. She felt invisible. The email arrived on a gray Thursday afternoon. "We appreciate your dedication, but we've decided to move forward with another candidate." That was it. No explanation, no conversation, just a closed door. Melissa sat in her car for 40 minutes that day, staring out the windshield. Anger came first, then confusion, then a hollow sadness that clung to her ribs like cold air. Her mind played all the familiar loops. It's not fair. Why do I even try? What's the point of doing things the right way if it doesn't matter? But underneath those thoughts was a quieter one, harder to hear at first. Maybe this isn't about the job at all. That night, scrolling through a blog she followed on personal development, she came across a passage from Epictetus. "Don't seek for events to happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly." She read it 3 times. It felt like a slap and a hug at the same time. She realized something then. Her suffering didn't come from not getting the promotion. It came from the belief that she should have. It came from her demand that life be fair, but life had never promised fairness. It only offered the moment. It was then Melissa began the slow, humbling process of shifting her mindset from expectation to acceptance. Acceptance didn't mean agreeing with injustice. It meant no longer allowing it to poison her peace. She started a small ritual each night she called the release list. She would write down 3 things that felt unfair that day, then ask herself, "Can I control this?" If the answer was no, she'd draw a small line through it. Not to erase it, but to release it. And little by little, she noticed her energy changing. Where she once obsessed over office politics, she started focusing on her craft. She began volunteering for projects that aligned with her strengths, not to be seen, but because they made her feel alive. She mentored a new hire. She reworked an internal process no one had touched in years. She let her work be her protest, and her peace be her power. 6 months later, an unexpected offer came from another company, one that had noticed her work from afar, admired her consistency, and respected her quiet authority. They didn't just offer her a title. They offered her a seat at the table. Melissa didn't get justice from the place she expected it. She got freedom by letting go of the need for it. This is the trap. We think if something isn't fair, we must fight it, fix it, or feel broken by it. But that gives away our strength. Stoicism teaches something radical. The moment you stop demanding the world to change and start responding with clarity and calm, you become unshakable. Leo saw this too in his own journey. Not every project got recognized. Not every apology came. But what changed was his definition of victory. It wasn't about validation anymore. It was about alignment. Did I act with integrity? Did I do what I could with what I had? Did I remain true to my values? That became the new metric. Not outcome, but ownership. And maybe that's the greatest freedom of all. To meet life exactly where it is and still choose to show up with power, with presence, with peace. So the next time life denies you something you feel you deserve, take a breath. Ask yourself not, why is this happening to me? But how do I want to respond to this? Because when you stop demanding fairness, you start reclaiming control, and that changes everything. Leo used to think calm people were just born that way, as if some lucky few came into the world with a special chip in their brain that made them unshakable in the face of chaos. He wasn't one of them. He reacted quickly, especially when he felt disrespected. His stomach would tighten, his voice would rise, and later, he'd replay it all in his head, wishing he'd handled things differently. But now he saw it with new eyes. Calm wasn't a trait, it was a skill. And like any skill, it could be trained. Repetition, resistance, and rest. The same way you train a muscle. It began with small moments, those ordinary invisible tests that show up throughout the day. The barista gets your order wrong. A coworker interrupts you in a meeting. Your partner forgets something important. Each moment was a weight in Leo's mental gym. Each pause before reacting, a rep. He started to build a discipline around it. In the mornings, before checking his phone or diving into work, he'd take 5 minutes to breathe. Not meditate in some mystical way, just sit, focus on his breath, and listen to the quiet. It wasn't easy. His mind would wander. But that was the point. Every time it did, and he gently brought it back, it was another rep. Then came his new habit, controlled discomfort. What he called mental cold showers. He would deliberately do something small that made him uncomfortable. It could be speaking up when he normally stayed quiet. It could be holding eye contact longer in a tense conversation, or choosing to walk instead of drive, even when running late. These acts weren't punishment. They were training grounds for resilience. Every bit of discomfort was a rehearsal for bigger storms, and the storms did come. One afternoon, he was caught in a chaotic meeting where everything was falling apart. 2 department leads were arguing, blaming his team for the delays. The old Leo might have jumped in, defensive, trying to prove a point. But instead, he took a single breath. He waited. He listened fully. When he finally spoke, it wasn't to defend. It was to ask a clarifying question, calmly, clearly, with zero tension in his voice. The room shifted. The argument lost steam. People listened. That moment didn't come out of nowhere. It came from training, from the invisible work he'd been doing every day. He began to see calm not as something you apply in the moment, but something you build before the moment ever arrives. It's a reserve, a resource you can draw from when everything else is burning. And just like the gym, consistency mattered more than intensity. He created a rhythm. Every week he'd do 3 things. 1 physical challenge, like hiking without music. 1 mental stillness exercise, like writing down his worst fear and sitting with it. And 1 act of service, like helping a neighbor or mentoring a colleague. These weren't random. They were his Stoic stack, designed to strengthen body, mind, and spirit. Something else changed, too. He stopped waiting for calm to show up. He started creating it, on the bus, in line at the grocery store during difficult conversations. Wherever he was, he'd look for small cues. His shoulders tensing, his breath shortening, his mind racing. Those were signs, invitations to return to center, and he learned not to be discouraged by failure. There were days when he lost it, when he said the wrong thing or reacted too fast. But he didn't see those moments as setbacks anymore. He saw them as missed reps. And missed reps didn't mean he was weak. They just meant he was still in training. Over time, his relationships improved, not because people changed, but because he did. People felt safer around him. They trusted him more. They knew he wouldn't explode or disappear. His calm wasn't performative. It was embodied, real, built through repetition, failure, and resolve. Leo became a kind of quiet warrior, not the kind who needed to dominate a room, but the kind who could hold his ground when the ground itself was shaking. That's the secret no one tells you. Calm is hard. It takes work. It takes patience. But it gives you something outrage never can: clarity, confidence, and control. So if you're waiting to feel calm before acting calm, you'll be waiting forever. You have to practice it now, in the little moments, in the daily grind, in the ordinary chaos, because every time you choose calm, you're lifting the weight of your own mind. And one day, when the storm comes, and it will, you'll find that you're not drowning in it. You're standing tall, steady, ready. Not because you got lucky, but because you trained for this. Chaos rarely announces itself with a warning. It just shows up, uninvited, inconvenient, and often at the worst possible time. Leo woke up late. The alarm hadn't gone off. The client meeting he was supposed to lead was in 45 minutes, and traffic in Barcelona was already building. He threw on clothes, skipped breakfast, and bolted out the door. only to find that someone had sideswiped his parked car during the night. No note, no witness, just shattered glass and a dented door. He stood there, jaw clenched, eyes burning. Not because of the damage, but because of everything it represented. Powerlessness, injustice, the unraveling of what was supposed to be a regular day. That's the thing about chaos. It doesn't need to be dramatic to be overwhelming. Sometimes it's 1,000 little frictions stacking on top of each other until your nervous system feels like it's being electrocuted. He wanted to scream, to throw his keys, to cancel the meeting, maybe the whole week. But then, almost mechanically, he closed his eyes. One breath in, one breath out. That was the pause, the sliver of space where choice lives. Not a performance, not denial, just presence. Leo didn't feel calm in that moment. He felt everything, but he didn't react. And that, he realized later, was the victory. Because chaos isn't a question of if, only when. The storm always comes. Flat tires, fights, illnesses, layoffs, rejections, tragedies. You can't predict them. You can't prevent all of them. But you can train yourself to meet them with a steady hand. He had a ritual now. When the world spun too fast, he'd find somewhere quiet, even if it was just the bathroom stall at work, and give himself 5 minutes. Not to fix anything, just to return. He called it his 5-minute sanctuary. Sometimes he just sat in silence. Sometimes he repeated a phrase like a mantra. This moment is not forever. Or, I choose how I show up. Other times he wrote one sentence in his phone. What's the next right thing? That tiny practice didn't solve his problems, but it stopped him from becoming them. He also carried with him a small card in his wallet, worn and creased from use. On it were 3 reminders. 1, you are not your thoughts. 2, respond, don't react. 3, let go of what you can't hold. It sounds simple, but in the middle of panic, simple becomes sacred. And here's what Leo learned, perhaps the most surprising part of all. Calm isn't about control. It's about surrendering to what you can't control without losing who you are. It's about protecting your energy like it's your most valuable asset. Because it is. When chaos strikes, most people give away their power without realizing it. They hand it over to the driver who cut them off, the coworker who spoke out of turn, the family member who disappointed them. But Leo stopped giving people that kind of access. Not out of apathy, but out of discipline. He started measuring strength, not by how much he could carry, but by how little it took to break him. And when he found those breaking points, he didn't shame himself. He trained them. With every triggered moment he met with breath, with every insult he didn't absorb, he built an internal fortress. People began to notice. You're so grounded, they'd say. Nothing rattles you. But that wasn't true. He still felt everything. He just chose not to let it hijack him, because calm is not the absence of chaos. It's the presence of clarity in the midst of it. It's not detachment. It's direction. It's the quiet conviction that no matter what's happening around you, you still get to decide who you are within it. So when the next storm hits, and it will, you don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to fix everything. You just need to remember. Your response is your responsibility. And even in the fire, you can choose not to burn. Leo wasn't superhuman. He was just prepared. And his calm, that wasn't luck. It was armor. And you, reading this now, you can build it too. Not all at once, not without setbacks, but breath by breath, thought by thought, choice by choice, because the storms will come. But you don't have to be swept away. You can learn to stand still. You can learn to stay whole. You can choose calm anyway. Leo's journey didn't begin with wisdom. It began with a breaking point. From the outside, he looked like he had everything under control. A stable job, a peaceful apartment in Barcelona, a life that seemed quiet and composed. But inside, he was unraveling. Stress, resentment, suppressed emotion. He carried it all without a word, until one evening, it all boiled over. What looked like a small argument became an emotional earthquake, and for the first time, Leo saw just how much control he had lost over his own mind. That night, sitting on a bench in the dark, something unexpected happened. A video on Stoicism, just a single phrase, planted a seed. You can't control what happens, but you can control how you respond. That phrase, seemingly simple, unlocked a new direction. He didn't change overnight, but he took a step, and then another. And slowly, Leo began to reclaim what he didn't even realize he'd lost: his inner authority. His journey wasn't about escaping emotion or becoming someone else. It was about training. Just like an athlete trains the body, he began training his mind, through breath, through pauses, through choosing not to react and instead to respond. He noticed his thoughts more. He let go of the lies his mind whispered when life didn't feel fair. He stopped expecting perfection from others or from himself. And what he built was not indifference. It was clarity. Leo faced workplace disrespect, betrayal of expectations, chaotic days where everything fell apart. But now, he brought something new to those moments. Calm. Not forced, not fake. Earned, practiced, real. The kind of calm that doesn't deny the storm but knows how to stand in the middle of it. His story is not just about surviving stress, it's about mastering it. Not by controlling life, but by controlling what matters most: his mind. And that kind of mastery, that inner power, is available to you too, no matter what your life looks like, no matter how reactive you've been in the past. Because calm isn't a gift, it's a habit, and habits are built one choice at a time. So what's the takeaway from Leo's story? That your greatest power isn't in controlling the world, it's in how you meet it. Whether it's traffic, rejection, a hurtful comment, or an uncertain future, your real strength shows when you can pause, breathe, and respond with purpose. And that doesn't make you weak. That makes you a warrior. So here's a question for you. A simple moment of self-awareness. When someone says something offensive, what's your most common reaction? A. Snap back quickly without thinking. B. Stay quiet, breathe, and decide later. Comment your answer below. Just type A or B, and let's see how many of us are trying to take control of our responses, one moment at a time. Now I'd love to hear your thoughts. What part of Leo's story resonated with you the most? How do you usually deal with chaos? Have you ever experienced a shift like Leo's? Drop your story in the comments. We read everyone, and your insight might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. If this story moved you, helped you reflect, or gave you something to hold on to, please support this channel by subscribing. It means the world to us and helps us keep creating content that makes a difference. What comes next might just be the message you need most, so hit that subscribe button and join us on this journey to build calmer, stronger, wiser lives together.